Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the KZ Krila, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank KZ Audio for providing the Krila for review. Greatly appreciate it. KZ Audio, you rock. Alright, so a quick disclaimer. A good while back, I had said that I wasn't going to review KZ Audio products anymore because of some questionable business practices, some questionable manufacturing tactics, and some outlandish marketing claims. And so I was declining any offers to review KZ products, and I wasn't answering any questions or comments about KZ. As time went by, I started to think that, you know what, everybody deserves a second chance, including KZ. And over the months, KZ had been reaching out to me, sometimes upwards 3 or 4 times a week, asking if I would review their products. And I kept declining it and telling them I wasn't interested in reviewing their products. Along came the Krila and some hype with it and some suggestions to review it. And then KZ came along and was offering to provide a Krila for review. And I debated it, and I really thought about it hard, and I asked some friends for some advice, and really struggled with saying yes to it. And finally, I responded back to KZ, and I was like, "Look, you guys are making some pretty wild marketing claims about the Krila, and I'm going to, review it based on a few of these claims." And I'm going to give my honest opinion about the Krila. They came back and they said, "We will accept your honest opinion, and we're not going to interfere with any of your reviewing process. We're not going to try to give you some talking points or anything of the sort." And I was like, okay. And so they provided the free Krila and no other compensation. And when it arrived, I put it through its paces. And now let's talk about the KZ Krila. So the Krila, it'll cost you anywhere from $19 to $31, depending on where you purchase it from. And currently on the KZ Audio website, it's $19. Some of the outlandish marketing claims that you'll find on their website claim that the KZ Krila's curve graph data can outperform 99% of earphones. Another one is the superior performance crushes any single dynamic driver earphone. So the Krila, it has the Krila has 28 to 36 ohms of impedance, depending on how many of the tuning switches are active. Sensitivity of 106 decibels, frequency response range of 20 Hz to 40 kHz. I'm surprised KZ didn't slap a high-res sticker on the box, considering this thing goes to 40 kHz. So the Krila comes in this pretty standard KZ box. We're not going to bother to open it. On the inside, you get a couple accessories. You get a tuning switch tool, and then 2 types of tips. You get foam tips, which were pre-installed on the Krila, and then you get KZ Starline tips, which are the tips that I used for the review. And then you get the standard KZ cable. It's an okay cable for $20-ish IEM. Not even going to talk about it. And then you get the Krila. They're nice looking. You have a metal faceplate and a semi-transparent back that's made of resin. And then you have your tuning switches. Now the thing to note on the Krila, the tuning switches on the left side, it says on up top and 1, 2, 3, 4. On the right side, on is on the bottom and it goes 4, 3, 2, 1. So they actually installed the tuning switch pad backwards on the shell, or upside down. So just be careful of that. Maybe that's an issue with mine and they just installed it incorrectly, but it could be a little confusing. So just make sure if you're going to change the dip switches that you're looking at which way on is facing. Overall, the build of them is okay. It's nothing special, but for $20, it's acceptable. Comfort and isolation of outside noises is decent. They're a little bit large. They're not heavy, though. And I do find that they fit in my ears fine. And with that slight wing that they have and the angle, it's an okay fit. Isolation of outside noises is about 50-55%. They're not going to block out a ton of stuff. They're just going to kind of muffle things as you're going around the house or in a light office setting. Going around the neighborhood or louder environments, they're not going to be that great. But overall, the build of them is decent, and isolation is all right. About an hour, hour and a half, and then I'll take a little break, put them pop them right back in. Source is our really not very picky with the Krila. It is fairly easy to drive with dongles. I had no issues there. Anything from a periodic audio Rhodium to a Heidi's XO and Audio Engine DAC 3, the Heidi's S9 Pro, and the Hibby FC3, Hibby FC4, it all sounded good. On DAPs, anything from the Hibby R5 Gen 2, Sony NWA105, and the Sony NW1A pushed it just fine. Desktop, I did use it kind of a little bit, not a whole lot. Some devices had a little bit too much output impedance and they hissed a little bit. But overall, the Krila is fairly easy to drive with no issues. I did find that they sound better on warmer sources, as that kind of helps to cover some of the flaws in the tuning, which we'll discuss later. Tuning switches. Tuning switches made little differences, not a whole lot. It was not super noticeable. Tuning switches 1, 2, 3, and 4 affect the bass. 1, 2, and 3 affect the bass. Number 4 affects the upper mids, lower treble, and presence regions. So somewhere between about 4K to 8K, somewhere in there is where the number 4 switch affects it. So putting 1, 2, and 3 on, you'll notice differences in the bass. I preferred all 3 to be active. Number 4 definitely made a difference. That lowers the upper mids and lower treble by about 1.5 dB, and it softened it up a little bit and made it so it's not as aggressive. So how do the KZ Krila sound? The KZ Krila are, a budget IEM, and they have budget sounding bass. It's fun sounding. It doesn't extend super well into the sub bass, even with all 3 of the switches being activated. It is a little bit lame, I would say, in the sub bass. You get just a very little bit of rumble and grumble, nothing too exciting. Mid bass is where the focus is in the bass, and you get some decent punch and slam. And it has a little bit of texture. It's not the greatest there. But overall, it's an okay bass. It has some fun side to it. Gets a little bit muddled and confused on busier tracks. Tonality of the bass is all right. And detail retrieval and resolution are okay. It's not the greatest, but it's good for a $20 IEM. Mids are recessed, especially in the lower mids. And the upper mids are definitely more elevated, so they're a little bit unbalanced and uncohesive. But for the most part, it's a decent sounding mid. Tone and timbre is a little bit off, and it does have some metallicism to it, and it has a little bit too much elevation in the uppers, so that throws off the tonality of brass and woodwinds and stringed instruments especially, and also affects pianos. Pianos, whether it be acoustic piano, will always sound like it's digitized. It will sound like it's a keyboard. Never really get a natural tonality out of a piano on the Krila. It is kind of strange in that way, but with the tonality and with it being elevated, just throws off the instruments. Vocalists tend to be a little bit shouty and a little bit on the aggressive side. Treble. Treble is definitely more prominent in the lower treble than in the rest. There's a decent extension out, and it has enough air and sparkle and energy to kind of add a little bit of excitement to the sound. Tonality wise, again, is similar to the mids in that it's just too elevated and it throws off the tone and timbre of instruments and vocalists. Soundstage of the Krila is fairly wide. It does a good job of portraying different sizes and stages, whether it be something small, medium, or large. It's not the biggest depth and deepest depth overall, but it does a decent job of allowing you to look into the stage a little bit. Layering is alright, except for on busier tracks, it'll tend to be a little bit more confused and kind of mold things together instead of allowing things to play and be cohesive. Imaging is alright. It's not the most precise in its placement, but it'll follow things around the track. And then it'll allow you to be able to say one thing is in front of the other for the most part, except for on those busier tracks. Tonality of the Krila, as I mentioned, is not the most natural. The bass region sounds more natural than the rest of the mix. It does have a BA timbre-ish metallic tonality to it, and it is too elevated in the upper mids and lower treble, and it throws off instruments. And then detail retrieval and resolution throughout is okay for a $20 IEM, but it is a little bit on the harsh and glassy side and a little bit glary in resolution, especially in the mids and in the treble region. So overall, the Krila is a decent IEM for $20. And I find that other than the tonality problem being a little bit off and not being super natural, it is a decent sounding IEM that I can tolerate and listen to. It's one of the better sounding KZs I've heard. Now, KZ claims that the superior performance of the Krila crushes any single dynamic driver earphone. All right. How about one that's in the $20 price point? And that's the TANGZU WAN'ER. The TANGZU WAN'ER is not crushed by the Krila. In fact, the Krila is crushed by the WAN'ER. The WAN'ER is more natural and more accurate sounding when it comes to tonality, and it has better timbre. It is definitely a better natural sounding IEM, and it is also more neutral leaning. The WAN'ER also is very similar in detail retrieval and is better resolving than the Krila. Overall, I find that the WAN'ER is just a better performer in all aspects of sound when it comes to a $20 IEM. I definitely would pick the WAN'ER over the Krila. And then it says that the KZ Krilla's curve graph data can outperform 99% of earphones. So if you think that a graph will beat an IEM, or will tell you the sound of an IEM, then any IEM it can beat, and that's not the case. The LETSHOUER GALILEO absolutely destroys the Krila in everything that it does, tonality wise, and just overall details and resolution, and just better sounding, more accurate and true, better soundstage, better layering, better imaging. Overall, the GALILEO is a better performer, and it's only $100. And if you go higher than that, the Krila just gets embarrassed even more. So let's take KZ Krila for what it is. It's a decent $20 IEM. That's what it is. Stay in your price point, compete with your price point, and the Krila offers a different, unique sound, and it has 4 switches, which do make differences, something that most $20 IEMs don't have. So for the $20 price point, Krila is a solid performer. Other than that, it's nothing special, and it's not going to win any competitions. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support the channel. All that kind of stuff is listed down below. Speaking of supporting the channel, there's ways that you can do that through Patreon and YouTube memberships. I do want to thank my supporters. Very much appreciate everything that you give back to the channel, and the sacrifice that you give from your personal funds to give back to the channel is much appreciated. So thank you very much. If you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the links. There's all kinds of ways that you can do it with PayPal and Venmo for one-time gifts, and Patreon and YouTube memberships for monthly subscriptions where you can get access to my private Discord server, and also you have the opportunities for one-on-one conversations with me or private live streams. Also, while you're down there checking out all those links, check out the links. There's gear recommendations and tier recommendations and all kinds of other things down below. So check out those links, and then don't forget to enjoy the music and that honesty is the best policy.